but you are just an actress. Why are you commenting about this? So welcome everyone to episode 84 of Teh Tarik with Walid, and that was the line that has been asked of our guest today, who is quite the celebrity. She is an actual celebrity, like not a political celebrity, an actual celebrity, and she is Shu An. I got to know of her because of the Gaza Monologues event, and she was one of the speakers, and I think uh, she put in a really strong performance, and she was super empathetic and she was super eloquent, and I thought I needed to have her on, and she has graciously agreed to join me today. And
Hey, hello, hi Walid. How are
hello,
you?
you okay? I'm good. I'm good. I hear you well, so
Yeah.
hopefully you can hear me as well.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good.
So firstly, thank you for agreeing to do this. And as I
Thanks for
said,
having me.
you are quite the star. You have, other than your celebrity status, on
No, no,
TV
no.
and the online shows you've done, you have about 80,000 followers as well. Okay,
Yeah,
so so thank you. And let's get to it. My first question is, I
yeah.
wanted to ask you, because even in this post, right, the post that I was advertising for this episode,
Mm.
and you said that you are still not political, right? Why?
Yeah.
Why do you feel a need to say that?
I don't know. I guess it's kind of like okay, my answer to this is three-pronged. I
Wow.
think. Okay, okay. So like bear with me, right? So like the first thing of I guess like when we talk about politics, Professor, can you define politics?
Wow. So you're asking me, okay. So politics is the study of the distribution of power, right? So who gets what and how. That's the simplest
Yeah.
definition I'll give you.
Right. Okay, so when with that, I feel like a lot of it's like government and then all these like authority figures or like authority, right? And I feel like to be political, like to be an activist is sort of like to be engaging with those bodies and to be engaging with like the policies as they exist and is how that power is used, right? So in that sense, I don't feel that I have the ability to do that or the knowledge to do that. Then the other part of the thing is, I do think everything is inherently political because our lives are all shaped by these policies, right? And uh, yeah, there are certain laws that protect people more than others, and certain laws that disadvantage some people more than others, and that's so in that sense, like everything's political, and the way that our media is, the way that people are framed in stories, the way that we tell our stories, all of that is political. The way that we see people, right, is all shaped by these things. So that's one. That's the other thing, and then the third part of it is that I think I also wonder about the way the term is used and the way that people like view activists or the way that activists are painted more so because they're often painted as sort of like almost like troublemakers or like those people who very idealistic don't understand the real world or I don't know what like but just not in a good way, right? And I think I also wonder sometimes like how that benefits people in power because if everything is political, then in some ways actually we're all as citizens, we are all sort of we should be able to participate in this world that we live in, right? So I guess I don't really have an answer for it, but I think because I don't have the ability to really understand a lot of those laws or to be able to engage with them in that way, I find it hard to say that I'm political because I always feel like I don't have enough knowledge. But I also understand that our lives are, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was an incredibly comprehensive answer. And I think a lot of us, like Singaporeans, we like to underestimate. I think this is not by accident, but we underestimate the ultimate power lies in the people, right? Because even if it lies in the government, I mean, it's the people who voted in our government, right?
Yeah.
So that's where their legitimacy is derived from. So, and I don't think it's an accident that we see political as a dirty word, as Leanne said, when,
Mm.
and as you said, everything is political, right? The price of bread, right?
Mm.
The price of makeup, the marriage the definition of marriage, all of these are political, inherently political. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. And I would also like to direct people to Shu An's episode on Yalaba, the podcast. I listened to 1 hour, 40 minutes, every second of it. And it has Shu An's life story. And towards the later part, you discuss Palestine, and that's really the focus of today, right? And I wanted to ask you, why Palestine, and were you active politically before this? And I know Sarah said Sarah Bagarit, how you connected with her was because of her incident 3 or 4 years ago now. And what was your opinion of Israel and Palestine before this, if you had any? Because I think, from what I know of you, your journey, if we can call it that, on this issue actually mirrors a lot of Singaporeans. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think like because before October 7th, I'll start with like what I knew of Israel before that. I think Israel was like the Holy Land. I knew Israel trained our army, and I knew people who had commanders, or what they call them, like in the army, who were Israelis, and they had very fond memories of them and good relationships with them. I also knew that when I was much younger, because I was looking for a martial arts to learn, then Krav Maga was actually one of the options that I was looking at, because it had a reputation for like being the deadliest martial arts. And you know, when you're younger, and also I think a lot of these things that we are like power is strength, and strength is power, and you know what I mean. And it was kind of like, oh, to learn, if I was going to learn a martial arts, I want to learn the deadliest one, and Krav Maga was that. So and also I know a lot of I think there are a lot of technologies being used here that also come from Israel. There's a lot of like close ties there. So I think everything that I heard of it was good. Then with October 7th, at first, like when a lot of people were talking about it, I didn't really quite understand what was going on. I kind of thought, oh, a terrorist attack, right? And I think as I saw more videos coming out, and more videos of like children being bombed and hospitals being bombed and people being told to evacuate and given like a day to go. And then Sarah was like posting a lot about it, and I was like, what's happening here? So I think I started looking more, and as I read more and I learned more, it was like a complete shift. It was just horrifying. Like, yeah, it's just horrible. Yeah, the stuff that was coming out, I was like, this wouldn't happen to any other country, and it wouldn't be allowed to happen to any other country and at that point it was like maybe like three weeks in, it wouldn't have been allowed in like any place else, you know, or like any of like the Western countries, or
it wouldn't have happened to any other country. And we don't have to go far back in history, right? Just 3-4 years ago, when Ukraine was invaded, right? Unjustly invaded. And you saw like the whole world making a fuss, and rightly so, especially the Western world, right, making a fuss. And you know, even sportsmen, sportswomen, you know, Hollywood, all making a huge fuss. And you clearly see that is not happening now, right? So what specifically changed for you? So Sarah posted this,
so
then
Sarah
what changed for you? Yeah.
I mean, I was just watching like the sheer number of horrific videos that were coming out. Like, it was just, oh my God. Like, every day a new level of atrocity, every day a new level of inhumanity, and it was just crazy. And I think another thing was also, oh shit, I had a thought and then it flew away. Okay, I need to. Oh, another thing is also, I remember like at the beginning, a lot of my thoughts were around like, guys, I'm not anti-Semitic, okay, but like this is really not okay. And when I went back to look at my stories, I was like, how come I keep talking about how I'm not anti-Semitic, as opposed to like what's what's happening there. I mean, I was talking about what's happening there, but I was so afraid that people would misconstrue it as anti-Semitism. And I was like, oh, that is a little bit weird. Because, you know, with Russia and Ukraine and with a lot of other issues that we talk about, the level of fear is very different. There's something about this topic that strikes fear into a lot of people. And then you see like media around the world kind of like not, I don't know, not wanting or not daring to kind of like say certain things. And you kind of wonder like what's happening? Like, because this amount of fear about talking about something is not natural, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there was that as well. Mm.
Why do you think you were so fearful? Like, why did you think you had to constantly preface this with "I am not anti-Semitic"? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? That's the weapon that they use. I mean, now they're saying that like basically anyone who doesn't agree with them is anti-Semitic, and
Yeah,
at some point you kind of go like, does that
yeah,
still make sense? But at the beginning, there was a real fear of like, what?
right.
Like, do I really don't see a certain group of people as human? But actually, when you think about it, it was that I didn't see Palestinians as human because they've never been painted as human or never been shown to be human. And then now, like, it's so horrible that you see um, all these videos and they have to film their deaths to convince us that this is happening. You know, they have to film the deaths of their friends, their family, and everyone that they know and love. They have to film that in order to convince us. And even then, like so many months in, it still hasn't ended. Yeah, and
Right.
I think yeah, there were so many videos, and then also I think it was a lot of videos from like the past that I saw that made me rethink stuff. Like there was this man who was hugging his olive tree and saying, "This olive tree is my baby." And this wasn't from like recent; it was like from one of the many times that um all these like horrors were being like inflicted on them. And he was like, "This tree is my baby. Don't kill it. It's like my baby. Don't kill it. Don't kill it." And there was this feeling of a connection to the land that I don't think I've ever really understood as a
Mm.
Singaporean. You know, like yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And you can see that there are levels of dehumanization that you talked about as well. Like one of the things that also got me, as hard as it is to witness like children being killed, of course, like anyone with a heart, right? But why did it take children being killed? Right? What if it
yeah,
was just men, old men being killed? Like, is that like, is their humanity discounted such that it needed their children to be killed for that to happen?
yeah,
So yeah, it was just levels and levels of dehumanization that I saw, and also I was thinking like people were saying the women and children, but what about the men? What about me?
yeah. It's true. No, true. And they're all
Again,
because they're all
innocent,
civilians,
innocent.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
They
true.
are
Yeah,
civilians, right? Like, why is it like, is it Palestinian men or Arab men are seen to be guilty until proven otherwise? What is it, right? So yeah,
yeah.
it was just crazy. And we'll get back to this, I'm sure. But there's a question from Masagos.
Hmm.
This is not the minister. This is my friend Masagos. Have you had negative reactions from friends, colleagues, and family from sharing content on
Oh,
Gaza? If so, how did you handle it? And the other thing is, I wanted to ask, you are quite a star, Have you lost opportunities that yet? Come on, please, no need for false humility. Yeah.
this is
So,
not about me, not about me. This is not about me.
no, it is not about you. It is about Palestine. But I think your journey is important, I think, because I think it resonates with a lot of ordinary Singaporeans who like you, don't consider themselves to be political. They don't really know too much about the Middle East. So I think it's okay. It's okay to embrace this personal aspect. So,
Okay, okay, okay,
yeah. So
okay.
did you lose job opportunities, or so? What about the reaction? So one is personal, the other is career-wise.
I think that definitely reactions. I have had people tell me to stop posting. I have had people tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. That is too complicated for me to understand, and that I just don't know enough, lor. Uh, then there are also people who very strongly disagree. And yeah, it's hard to kind of find a middle ground. Like I don't know what the middle ground is for this. There is no, yeah, if you disagree, disagree. And I think that there are probably friendships that have not survived this. Yeah.
So
Mm.
you know of so actual friends that you have you are no longer friends with.
Uh, there there are people who have distance. Yeah. But it's, I mean, yeah, that's I'm okay with it, I think. I mean, it's sad. But there are also people, you know what? There are also people who have changed their minds. Yeah.
Right.
So I should also talk about the hopeful side of it. It's like because I think that honestly, like what we're seeing, right, is so just horrible. I don't have a better word for this. It's just so horrible that I think that as it happens, I think a lot of people who are rational and who are uh, empathetic and who just are human, and a lot of them do at some point go like, actually, maybe I need to question some things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you're right. And there is this comment when you cried during the Yala But podcast. I became a fan. We need more
Um,
influential people to have the courage to speak up on this. Do you lose sponsors for sharing opinions on this? So I first of all, Shami, miss me. I don't think you needed her to cry before you became a fan. I
yeah.
think the fact that you're speaking up on this, I think
Yeah.
that because I think there are different levels of speaking up, right? Because for a lot of people with maybe 20 followers or whatever it is, yeah, I mean, there's little to lose, right? There's still something to
Mm.
lose. There's still something to lose.
Sure
So,
have
but for
yeah.
somebody like you have far more to lose, right? So I think when you speak up, I think it does matter. It does matter a lot more than maybe when I speak up. Yeah.
No, I don't.
So
I mean, I hear you, but
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, but, I also celebrity worship needs to die. I think like
I agree
the idol
with that.
worship of like anybody needs to die. You know what I
I
mean? Like
agree.
we yeah, like putting other people's opinions over us, whoever, like even if it's not like anyone putting anybody's opinion over yours just because of who they are is probably not a great idea. Because especially through this thing, you also see like that even if somebody agrees with some, like even if you agree with a point of view that this other person has, you can't go like, okay, because that person agrees with this, then I'm gonna agree with everything else that they say because we only know like one aspect of them, right?
Yeah.
And also it's like yeah, there's also something in our culture that trains us to believe ourselves less and to kind of like put ourselves down over other people who are supposedly like I don't know, smarter, more important, richer, whatever. Like, and that's not good. That's a very like capitalist kind of like way of looking at human beings.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Instead
yeah,
of looking at their inherent value, we look
yeah.
at their production value, right? What they
Something like
produce
that.
for what they produce
Yeah,
for society. Yeah. So I definitely agree with you. Celebrity worship is bad. And I think the latest incident, right, it has shown that completely, right? Like Hollywood celebrities who were pontificating about morality and suddenly like these double standards. But it's not that I was admiring you because you were a celebrity, right? The reason why I admired what you did is because you spoke up when there's a lot to lose. So I think that's different. That's not worshipping the celebrity. It's not worshipping, but it's admiring what they do, right? So surely that
right.
is reasonable, right? Oh,
I don't know. I feel like I I feel like okay, I hear what you're saying. I feel like also in some ways like I don't want to kind of like center myself in like in this conversation. Do you know what I mean? But I also hear what you're saying in that I think that when it comes to talking about stuff, like in general, like people stand to lose
yeah.
things, right? Like I'm sure that there are certain things that when if you were to talk about, like you also potentially could lose your job, right? And there are people who, if they talk
Hey,
about such
hey,
like
hey. Don't
yeah,
don't don't don't
true,
anyhow
true,
wish
true, true,
things
true,
for
true, 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 true. Yeah. But I think you know it's because people all
Yeah, yeah,
around
yeah.
the world are getting
Of
either like
course.
expelled from school, they're getting
Of
jailed, they're
course.
getting yeah. So I think that there is something about this that is just so deeply divisive, and like the powers that be like really just come down really strong on it. So yeah, but I think then the other thing is also this world that we live in is very funny, because not say funny, but as in like some of the things is like, okay, if you don't have a job means you cannot earn money, means you could potentially just starve to death. Like that is the reality of the world that we live in, and I sometimes wonder if that's a good one.
Is there
Yeah.
any other alternative, you think? to that?
Uh, I don't know. I guess okay. I don't know how to. Maybe you can help me out here. Like, like, are there other ways of like functioning as a community where it doesn't mean that if you don't have money, you cannot afford treatment, you will die. If you don't have money, you cannot afford food, you will die. If you don't have
Yeah,
money, you have nowhere to live, you will die. Like that's essentially what it is, right? If you like break it down to like the
yeah,
lowest basic thing. Is
yeah,
there another
absolutely.
way of living, that is also realistic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, think about prior to, before the modern nation state and modern capitalism, right? Like how people survive were because of communities and they would take care of. I mean, of course, it's not just pure altruism. It's on a rainy day, I'm going to help you. So in case I get a rainy day and then you help me as well, right? Nobody
Hmm.
is left today. But now when we see a homeless person when we see the Palestinians, right? Instead of asking, so we give $5 and then instead of saying, what can we do, right? We just think, oh, the government is not doing anything, right? So we, even ourselves, our sense of morality has been transformed because the
Mm,
responsibility we put it on other people, right? So I mean,
right.
and it's very difficult because you always think, what can I do? What can I do? I don't have power. I don't have power. But within your limited realm,
Mm,
what is it that you're doing, right? And you are obviously using your voice. And Leanne is asking, right? Have you taken the initiative to talk to fellow actors or celebrities about this issue? Because I think, and she mentioned social capital, and I think sometimes it's hardest to talk to our colleagues.
right.
In some ways, it's even harder than family members. Even though I think family members it's hard to do that
Mm.
on certain grounds. But for colleagues, I think it's even harder in some cases. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I do talk to people about it. Yeah, I do have the conversation. It often comes up. Actually, the thing is also because I think it's hard to not talk about it. Like, it's, yeah, I think it's hard to not be affected by this kind of like every day, right? Yeah. I
But
think a lot of
there
people,
are
I
many
think a lot of
people who
people
are
here
not
will
affected.
also,
There are
right,
many
sure.
people
But
who are not
think,
affected.
but I think there are many people here who will also find that it is kind of hard to function every day knowing that this is happening and that this is the world that we live in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, there are people who don't care, but I think I think that uh, we're not all going to be able to understand every issue. Yeah. I am trying to find like a human way of talking about it as well, because the other thing is also I feel like it's I don't know how I feel about going to people and be like, you need to talk about there's something a bit oppressive about that as well. I think that, and which is like, as someone pointed out before, is also in some ways a bit violent to be like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to,
Mm.
because we can't control people in that sense. But I'm also not saying that I don't have opinions about that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of life is also just kind of like finding people um, who are willing to kind of go on the journey together and to make a difference in the ways that we can and to support each other in that way. And hopefully along the way, like more people come and hopefully we have more conversations that convince people that to come. But it's like the front and center is always like, what can we do to help Palestine, right? And it's also, yeah, and also like to engage with it and to keep feeling with it. I think is part of us also maintaining our own humanity, because it's like I saw this quote about like we can't give up on humanity because humanity is in us, and to give up on humanity is to give up on our own humanity, yeah, and ourselves, yeah. So we
Right. And
have to hold on to that as well.
100%. I think the Christian Reverend Manta Isaac, the Palestinian pastor, he said that don't worry about us Palestinians. We haven't lost our humanity. You are the ones, the people who are silent on this. You are the ones who have lost your humanity, right? So I
Yeah.
think you are right. I think we need to understand that when we are speaking up, we are not speaking up for the Palestinians as much as we are speaking up for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because if this doesn't move us, what will? Right? If this
Yeah.
doesn't make us emotional, I don't know what would make us emotional, right?
Yeah. And also like the thing with that is like if the Palestinians will be to like say stuff about people and about people not talking, absolutely you are the ones who are going through it, you know what I mean? But I guess it's like for people like for us who are not so immediately affected by it, then it's also our duty to kind of communicate in okay, I shouldn't say that in that way, but I feel like maybe it's our duty to communicate it in a way that is the most effective and to get people to see it.
Is it wrong for me to have that expectation on someone though? So let's say somebody is very pro social justice, so always speaking up on every progressive issue on Ukraine, on LGBT rights, etc. But when it comes to Palestine, right? Except for Palestine. That's the title of this book, by the way.
Wow.
Except for Palestine.
Yeah.
So is it wrong for me to have that expectation on someone whom I know is vocal about social justice issues? But somehow when it comes to Palestine, and there are plenty of them, somehow when it comes to Palestine, oh, it's complex. I don't really know much, as if they knew much about Ukraine before that, and so on. So I guess when you say we can't go around telling people you need to do this, but shouldn't we, if they have portrayed themselves as such?
Maybe I shouldn't say that we can't go around telling people. Maybe I should say I wouldn't go around
Okay.
doing that. I understand how people might feel that that is the most effective way of doing things, and I honor that. Yeah. I don't think it. I mean, wrong is a strong word. I personally, I feel like having expectations of people is fine. I think making I'm coming to an understanding about, I don't know, their politics in what they do talk about and don't talk about is also fine. And deciding how you want to relate to them in the future is also in like maybe that's useful information for how you want to relate to them in the future. And for me, I will also, I mean, I will also question that. Yeah,
Right.
I will also question.
Has
Yeah.
that happened to you? Or put it more bluntly, would a person who doesn't care about this, would that be a deal breaker for a friendship, for an existing friendship?
I would say that as someone who has taken a long time to come around on a lot of issues and who never understood a lot of things. Like for example, like in terms of like LGBTQ issues for right. I was brought up very Christian and like for the longest time I really didn't understand I didn't understand it at all. Like I thought, okay, I will love the sinner, not the sin. Right? And then my best friend came up to me and instead of like welcoming her and thanking her for sharing with me something so uh important to her, I asked if I could pray for her, right? And I'm grateful that she remained my friend and that I came around and that she did some labor to kind of help me understand things. And also I also went to learn about other issues and stuff. So as someone who has been on a side that doesn't understand a lot of things, and there are going to be so many issues in the future that I don't understand or won't be able to talk about. I do think that as human beings that we are flawed. I think, yeah, so I guess that's kind of where I come from. But I would say that if those people are in positions of power and if there are people in positions that can like hire people or like make lives for people who have that belief very difficult, then absolutely they need to be held to account. Absolutely. They shouldn't be there. If you cannot function in a world that is, if you cannot function in a way that respects people's point of view, then you cannot hold that position.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. I think your position is the more mature position, and I hope people who are on the pro-Palestinian side adopt your position. So even though it's hard, I have to admit it's hard. Like for me
It's
personally, also
hard. Me too.
this issue has made me rethink many friendships, or even people whom I admire and respect, or used to admire more. It is hard,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think it's still the smarter thing to do is you want to expand, your bubble, right? You want to bring more people in, and the only way to do that is to not treat them as complete enemies, right?
Yeah. But I think it's okay for it to be hard, and it's okay to feel like you cannot be friends with them. And I think that's okay. I mean, that's not wrong, you know? Like, I think, yeah, it's just, yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I'm sorry, yeah. It's a lonely, it's not say lonely, but it's like it's a disappointing thing lah, because the stuff that's happening now, it flies against international law. It flies against everything that we believe to be human. So it makes sense to have a very strong reaction to people who
Absolutely.
don't seem to
Yeah.
understand it. Yeah.
So there's a question here. The question is actually directed to me. Like in that similar vein of other issues, how do we respond to people who reply with "What about this? What aboutism?" when we raise our voices about Palestine, for instance, or what's going on in Africa? What about Muslims like Uyghurs? And yes, I mean we should care about all of those, right? We should
Yeah.
care about, and the difference is, I would say, right, if we were to criticize the situation of the Uyghurs, right, nobody bats an eyelid. Nobody bats an eyelid. Very few people bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
And if you too so criticize the Saudi government, very few people bat an eyelid. But when it comes to this particular issue, right, all sorts of things, anti-Semitism, and then they will ask trap questions like, do you condemn this? Do you condemn 7 October? Do you condemn Hamas? Do you believe in Israel's right to exist, right? And the question is, we should always ask, like, do you condemn Israeli occupation? Do you believe in the Palestinians' right to self-defense? Do you believe in Palestinians' right to exist, right? The difference is this, because there is a huge international double standard, and that has been going on for the longest time by the people who hold power, not by random Joe, not by uncle at the coffee shop, right? These are by the people in power, right? The Western civilization, quote unquote. Of course, it's not a monolith. I'm talking about the governments, because there are many people who are protesting against it as well. So Sarah commented, it's harder though to reconcile how some who are closest to you have yet to engage in the situation. Any thoughts on that, Shu An?
It is hard. It's hard. And it's hard to it's hard. I feel like it's hard. I don't know how to. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that
Yeah.
I guess that's something that we have to kind of like make sense of as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know how to answer that as well. I don't know how to make her feel better because
I
I'm
don't think you
feeling
can, right? Yeah. But
I'm
I think
feeling that
actually this,
myself as well.
yeah, but I think this is also part of the reason why, like, when I mean, I love these conversations that you have with people. I learn a lot through the conversations that you have, and um, thank you for asking me, even though I was like, I don't know why I'm here. But I think part of it also is like the more that we do talk about it with people who want to talk about it, I feel like the less alone that we feel, and it gives us strength to kind of like continue. And because that's what's needed right now, like this has really gone on for like far too long. But like, so then going back to the thing about the whataboutism, right? And like people bringing up all the other issues in the world, it's like, yeah, I agree that all those issues need to end. And a lot of them, like the root cause is actually quite similar,
Yeah.
right? It's, yeah. So then it's kind of like, one, usually when people, what about, I'm curious, like, are you talking about that issue? have you been talking about that
Yes,
issue? And are you coming from a
100%.
place of like, actually I've been talking about this issue, but nobody wants to talk about it. But then now you'll talk
100%.
about this. Then I'm like, okay, let's talk about
100%.
how you feel about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you haven't been talking about the issue and you're only like coming on to say like, I don't know about all these things, I think that's
Yeah.
part of the way that they do it, right? Like that every issue becomes so separated that we have to almost like pick things to put our focus on. But actually, if we think about it, all of them are generally asking for the same thing, which is that for people to be free, for people to have dignified lives, for people to have access to things. It's like we want the same thing for everyone. That's the most important thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We want the same thing, just like how we oppose the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and we oppose this as well,
Yeah.
right? So there's a
Yeah.
comment, no point talking to people who are still defending this brutal occupation now. I actually disagree with this comment because you have to convince people. Otherwise, if you say there's no point talking to people, that means we will forever be in status quo, and that means the situation will continue forever because majority of the people in power in the West do not believe in it. How are we going to convince them, right? We need to convince, we need to get mass mobilization, people to believe in it en masse, and then we can convince the politicians, right? Because they would react to where the public sentiment at. I think even though I understand, I completely understand, and I think it's more, it makes us more sane if we don't have to talk to people who disagree with us on this, on something so personal like this. But I think it's a self-defeating argument.
Right. I think that's another thing also, like, that I feel the way that we are brought up and the way that we're educated, it kind of teaches us out of feeling. Like, if you think about the things that we learn in school, right? Like, life and death happens to everybody, right?
Right.
But we don't talk about that. We never, hardly ever talk about that. And then, even like how to do everyday life, like finances, or like how emotional literacy, empathy, like it's not important in the schools that we go to, right? And then the other, maybe it's changed now, but I mean, when I was growing up, that definitely wasn't in the curriculum. And then also, like, part of surviving in the world that we live in is it requires us to turn off our emotions. Like, it requires us not to feel a lot of things because
What
if
do you
not, it's
mean?
very, very,
Can you elaborate?
like, okay, so like, if we felt everything that if we felt for everything and for every issue, I think it would be very hard for us to get up and go to work,
100%.
right?
Which we are
And
feeling, we have been feeling for the past few months anyway,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But it's also part, and so like I think part of it is that we are trained to not feel because that is seen as being professional or being adult, and that's part of like what you need to do in order to life, right? And it encourages us not to feel. So I think that when people cannot engage with stuff, and myself included, cannot engage with things, I sometimes go back to like, when did I learn to not care? Because if you look at kids, you look at a lot of kids had to be taught to not care. A lot of kids instinctively they cry when, like they find out that chicken is from a live chicken, and then they find out that, oh, it's a real animal, then they start to feel bad for it, right? They cry when they sense unfairness or injustice, but eventually that gets like kind of like beaten out of us, right? Like, yeah. And yeah, but I think it's part of like living in this world that forces us to do that. So
Right.
how do we create like softer communities in a softer world that allows us to be human, I guess?
I guess that's quite a deep point. I agree. I do think that it's impossible to fully beat that out, which is why it's buried deep down inside, which is why that a lot of people who were not political, quote unquote, before this, suddenly this was their political awakening, right? A lot of people in Singapore, especially, for them, like they don't really care about politics until this. And Megan, who was my student, she's a friend. She said, alienation from the self for increased productivity. This is what Karl Marx said, right? Capitalism at play again, and it's really how capitalism, modern capitalism, which we are trapped in,
Yeah.
has caused us to be alienated from each other, but also alienated from ourselves, our own souls, right? And I do agree with you. Yeah. So
Yeah.
why is vulnerability still seen as a weakness?
Mm.
Sarah said,
Yeah.
emotional vulnerability, and yeah, that's true, right? And
So
one of the
true.
things people like to say, oh, we cannot build foreign policy with emotions, right? And then these are the same people, right? When they hear the national anthem, they cry,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. Cry away.
Yeah.
Cry at your football matches when your team lose. It's fine. I do that as well, right? But we
Yeah.
need to cry when people are dying far more, right? Than when all
Yeah.
these other things is not important, not as nowhere near as important. So the same people who are saying us, they're just telling us, right?
Yeah.
Don't be emotional about this issue. Be emotional
Yeah.
about the other issues I care about, not the issues that you care about.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And also like nationalism is sort of like a construct, right?
It is.
Like the idea of like creating a nation that we like, love and will like die for and all that. And identities are also there, right? That
It is,
we
it is. But
yeah.
Shu An, human beings need constructs to live, right? So
Mm.
yeah.
But I
So
feel
it
like what I was
is.
saying
Yeah.
is what I was gonna say is like sometimes they convince us that the identity is more important than the human.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that.
yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah. So ultimately we must always go back to the fundamental idea that if you are a human being, you are entitled to certain things, right? Which is what you said at the start, right? In terms of healthcare and so on. And the most fundamental thing you are entitled to is life, not being killed. I think that's pretty basic. We can agree across all civilizations and religions, right? So, Shu
Yeah.
An, you're just an actress.
Yeah.
Why do you care? Why should I listen to you? Right? Why does your voice matter?
Don't listen to me, listen to other people. Listen to anyone that you resonate with. Just listen to someone who also, you know what I mean? Like listen to someone, like go, yeah.
Yeah, so
Listen to, yeah. Listen to
uh,
people who are talking about it, open our hearts, and learn. And I think that's the other thing, right? That's the other thing that capitalism does, right? Like it puts us into our roles and then it's like, oh, you're your vocation, you are just this, you cannot talk about this, you're just that, you cannot talk about this. Then it's like,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, why, like,
okay.
what does your profession have to do with whether you care about genocide, right?
Yeah. Then how about, the human being.
Right, yeah. So it's a very strange one.
Yeah.
But it's also like the opposite of celebrity worship, right? So the complete opposite. So on one hand, you have celebrity worship. On the other hand, oh, you're a celebrity. What do you know about the world, right? So it's a
Oh,
complete opposite, right?
right,
Don't you think?
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually I hadn't thought about, yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the other thing, right? Is like the thing with identities and our jobs and everything is like we're kind of like taught to view each one with a certain kind of thing. Like maybe there are certain things where I'll be like, this person is in a certain vocation and they talk to me about
Yeah.
maybe I'll like joke and be like, oh, am I judging
Right.
before I know what this person is about to say?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
possible as well, but
Yeah.
that's what happens, right? Yeah, but we go beyond our vocations and beyond our identities.
Right.
Yeah.
So by the
Mm.
way, Megan she's also in the art scene, and she asked if your work in the arts and the theater has been affected by this political awakening.
I,
So how you do your art?
oh, mm, that's a good question. I think in terms of like narratives, I feel like I have uh, had a lot of thoughts. So the thing is like sometimes okay, so in stories, right, it's always like how are people being framed, how are they being shown, what are the words that have been given to them and what are the circumstances that they've been put in and how are they relating to people and what are we saying in this power dynamic, right? And so I think for other issues that like for example like how women have been presented in the shows that I do or like whatever. So I've had conversations with people about those things before. And it's always interesting because there are some people who always say, oh, yeah, but it's not political, it's not political. We're not being political about this. But then there is something to be said about the interpretations that we may have of a text, and if like they're so wildly different, and let's just say it's a play about gender roles, right? Let's just say it's a play about like gender is a gender play, right? And someone who is male may have a very interpretation from someone who's like female, and they may be not so positive towards one of the genders or the other, but at the same time there's a lot of things that we know kind of generally try to paint like women in a specific way, which is like a little bit crazy, like maybe not so logical and all that. So then when the interpretations go up against each other and I bring up certain stuff, then am I bringing it up because I'm political, or because I am female, or because as a human being that is just my interpretation of it? So it's also like, when does that become a thing, right? I feel that the thing with political or whatever is that generally people think that we are neutral, and
Yeah.
but I think that if we look at the identities or whatever, it's like the oppressed are not on the same neutral as the
Exactly.
oppressing group. It's just not the same. And but then if the majority group or like whatever always thinks that they're neutral, then it's they assume complete objectivity lah, I think. So
Yeah.
I think that's been my. I'm sorry if that was a bit rambling and didn't
No, no,
make
no.
complete sense.
No, no, no. It
Uh,
did. It did. Yeah.
right, yeah. So I think that I've like been trying to have conversations about things before, and it's funny how it's always like, oh, you're being political. I think that what's happening now has actually in some ways made me a bit, I don't know how to say it, but a bit less scared almost of like saying
Hmm.
stuff. Like I have said stuff before, and it's always scary because you always risk not being hired
Of
again.
course. Of course.
Always,
Of course. Yeah.
always, right? But then because then there are people who will be like, if they don't understand, then you're the difficult one.
Yeah.
Or they don't appreciate having that kind of conversation. But I think it's also made me less scared because I feel like for other issues, like for example, the way women are portrayed and all that, right? Like there are a lot of women who have been very affected. I mean, how to say? I think you always think that it will reach a point where if it's bad enough, and that's a horrible way of saying it, but if it gets so bad that people cannot run away from the problem, that they would look at it, right? And I think with this issue right now, it's that I don't see how much worse it can get
Yeah.
with this, and people are still not looking at it. So I think in some ways it's made me less scared to talk about stuff, because I'm like, maybe there's certain things that we're not going to agree with, but I'm not going to then always only doubt my judgment.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I tend to
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And you said how worse could it get any worse? Don't underestimate Israel's capacity to go lower. I think
Very scary,
that's what I would
actually.
say. Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So remember at the start of October, they were trying to deny that they were the ones who were responsible for the bombing of the hospital. And since then, how many hospitals have been bombed? And it's almost like nothing already. You see soldiers, like young men and women, like just filming TikTok of them blowing things up. And then you see people like bringing, like physically, like random people going to the trucks, the 8 trucks, and taking things off them because it doesn't. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just crazy,
Why?
like how it's unbelievable,
Yeah.
And what's that? What's that new? Is it that new social media where random people come on? Young people like to be on it. I forget what it's called, but there is this.
Oh my God, is it?
Oh, hi, Omegle. Yeah,
Uh,
thank you. Hey, how come you
yeah,
know
yeah,
that's not your age?
No, oh my God, so wrong. No, because I want. Oh my God, Walid. And like, no,
Yes.
because what is this guy? Absorber something like he's a
Yes.
Palestinian, young Palestinian,
So
and he
he's the
goes on
one.
Omegle.
That's how I know. That's
Yeah,
how I know about
yeah.
it. And you just see like these are very young. A lot of them are teenage Israelis, and they are just saying like, "Oh, kill them all! Like the children deserve." And it's scary, It's scary, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
change is not come
indoctrination,
from
right?
within. It's indoctrination, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they are kids. You can't blame them. You have to blame the system around them, the parents, the education system, the media, the government. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So, you mentioned about neutral. It's really irritating when people say, I hate it when people say they're neutral. On this issue,
Mm.
I would rather somebody tell me they're pro-Israel than they're neutral.
Oh,
Honestly,
why?
at least, I mean, you have a moral compass. I disagree with your moral compass, but you have an but
Mm.
somebody who's neutral, for me, that's just pointless.
Yeah,
You are pointless.
yeah, right, right,
I just cannot.
right.
I cannot deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw this thing where it's like you have to be neutral but on the side of justice. You cannot stand on a neutral that is an inaction.
Right,
You have to
right,
be neutral but
exactly.
also have an understanding of what a just outcome is in that situation. And that would
Yes.
mean like equity and
Right.
equality and all that kind of,
So
right?
so
Yeah.
so when people I went at a talk by Academia SG, organized by Academia SG, I was asked, what do people say? What would you say if people say as an academic you are not being impartial? I said, I am not impartial. I
Right.
am partial. I am partial to justice. I am partial to fairness. I am partial to not wanting murders
Yeah.
of children, of men or
Yeah.
women. I think that's
Yeah.
very fair, and I don't think I need to be impartial. When there's an innocent person being killed, let's look at both sides, right? Let's look at both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And also,
No,
to be apolitical, right, is a political
mm,
choice. It's just that you choose to not talk about things which could get you into trouble. You choose to,
right.
and those choices are political choices. You just disguise them as apolitical, right? Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
I guess also, yeah, then there's
if
also because it also doesn't take into account that the world is not neutral. Like we're
yeah,
not living in a world where everything is equal and fair. Like if that were the case, then okay, maybe there truly is a neutral, a true neutral somewhere. But it doesn't quite exist yet.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So the final couple of questions. So why should Singaporeans care about this, right? Because like the average Singaporean was like you prior to 7 October. So most of them do not really care about foreign policy, especially. So usually they would say that their level of political involvement pertains to domestic politics, right? Like the
Mm.
cost of living, HDB, and so on. Why should they care about something so far removed? Beyond slogans and platitudes, why should they care about this?
I always feel bad saying should. Um, because like I feel like it's like telling people what to do, but I feel like there are many
Okay.
compelling reasons to care about it. I think that when any country can act like this against another with impunity, that should scare us. Like it should fucking scare us, you know? And like for then like people like countries to kind of come in and protect them and continue to send aid and weapons as everything that this country is doing flies against international law, like it should scare us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think, yeah.
that's a good answer. I think as a small country like Singapore, and this is something we have said all along, and the government has said all along, if international law is not adhered to, then it's really rule of the jungle and small countries will suffer. So at the
Yeah.
very least, we should care about this for our own. If we cannot speak to your morality, right, let's speak to your
Sure.
practicality, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
at
also,
the very least,
yeah. Yeah. No, 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 I shouldn't have sorry, yeah.
no, no, carry
Yeah.
on, carry
Yeah.
on. Yeah,
No, it's the yeah, I think I was listening to someone talk the other day and like she said something interesting, which was someone said, "Oh, we're here because we have morals. And she was like, actually, I don't agree. I'm not here to talk about Palestine because I have morals. Like the idea of like telling someone what is right is also violent. But she was like, how, like, I'm interested in how do we talk about these things with honesty and also joy, but with honesty. And right now, like, there's very little honesty. There's a lot of controlling of narratives. There's a lot of telling us who we're supposed to be caring for, and there's a lot of obfuscating facts. There's a lot of that happening. There's no true honesty in that conversation, right? And I think that's what it is. Like, how do we talk about what's happening in the world with honesty? Because there's a lot of this, like, I'm going to tell you only specific things so that you believe this. But then the funny thing is, like, people, not funny, that's horrible, but like people will be like, oh, you see all these videos, but they're all fake. They're all
Yeah,
fake. Everything coming out from Gaza is fake. So you are the
yeah,
one who is being lied to. And I'm like, okay.
yeah,
But I mean, what do you say to
yeah,
that, right? Yeah, but I
yeah.
think what she said, I thought really struck enough because it's true. Like, how do we do that? Because people are always going to feel that they're right about something. Then how do we have tools for us to be critical about things and to ask questions and to really hold ourselves to
Yeah.
honesty, and intellectual honesty as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so and that was Leanne's question as well. How do you start a conversation with someone who's neutral? And I think a lot of that personally, and I'll let Shu An weigh in as well, a lot of that is also based on the relationships that you had with that person. I think if you have a relationship with that person, and it doesn't have to be super close, but if that person knows that you are generally fair in life, you do not side with one person unfairly over another, and you're not unjust, probably they are going to be more amenable to hearing what you say. Of course, it's not
Maybe
100%. It's not 100%, but I think that developing those interpersonal relationships allows us to reach more people. Like, you can't just give a lecture, right, to people and expect everybody to change their minds, right?
mm,
If you are not friends with them to begin with, right? So I think
mm,
that is an important part of this community work, like this building
mm.
of friendships and interpersonal relationships. Yeah, did you want to add to that? Or
No, I so agree with that. Yeah. And it's this thing of like that's the also I saw this thing that was very interesting. Like, everything is like a tapestry, right? And we are pulling at the threads, and it will like help to unravel this kind of like unjust or like the systems that don't work for us. And then if everybody like goes and picks a little thread that they care about, and we all just keep doing it, then we can undo that and then like build a new thing together.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, that's a very beautiful artistic way of putting this.
Yeah, I wish I could find the quote. I wish I remember who said it.
So, okay, final one. What is something you hope to see from Singapore as a country, whether it's the people, the government? What is it that you hope to see with regard to Palestine?
I think I wish to see more trust. I think more trust in the people and more trust amongst ourselves. Like, Singapore has a very like don't like the activism or like the what's that called, the marches and all that. And the ones that I see all around the world have always been so peaceful. And I'm not saying, you know, about that, but like we should or like whatever. I'm just saying that I guess the question is, what do we think of each other and our fellow countrymen if we think that if we allowed that to happen here, that the worst would happen? What do we think of the people that we are existing with?
Hmm.
It doesn't feel like it's a very good thing if
Hmm.
we
How
automatically
strong are
assume
our
if
relationships to begin with if we think that is going to happen, is going to unravel
yeah.
immediately, right?
Do we not believe that our fellow Singaporeans care for the good of Singapore? Do we not believe that we are rational human beings? Do we not believe that we are loving human beings? Do we not believe that we care for the good of the country? Do we not believe that our fellow Singaporeans also care for it? Or is it some people do and some people don't and are willing to kind of destroy that? Do we assume the worst or the best of the people that we're living with? I think that would be my question.
Wow, that's a deep spiritual point, I suppose, that we should all reflect on. And you know the Gaza monologues, and as I said in the introduction, I think you did superbly well. You know, almost every other sentence of yours, people were clapping, right? And
Borrowed
but
strength and wisdom.
the Gaza monologues, I think, was a good event to show that, you know, a lot of Singaporeans are really rational. They are emotional and rational at the same time. These two things coexist, right? Emotional is not the antonym of rational. And even as I was doing the interviews afterwards, you know, they were talking about foreign policy, and they come in clear-eyed. They know that these things are not easy, it's difficult, but they say we should talk about it, and they are able to talk about it, have
Yeah.
these agreements in a constructive way. And I definitely agree. I think that's a call I can get on board with, which is we need to have more faith in each other, you know, and have more conversations, including with those whom we disagree with. So Shu An, thank you so much. I know you've been trying to belittle your own voice the whole time, but I think it's really important that people with platforms, it's not say that your voice is inherently more meaningful than someone else. I'm not saying that. But your voice has become more meaningful than others because of the platform you have. Yeah, so I think
I cannot
yes,
let it end on this. Cannot let it end on that. I just want to say,
please, please.
I just want to say to
Yes.
all the people who are watching and who care for what's happening and who are trying and whose hearts are in pain and who are grieving for everything that's happening, to not give up hope. There are people around, like we will hold each other and we will continue and we will take turns, and you know, like we will hold each other, and thank you, like, to everybody around like the world, you know what I mean? Like this has shown how beautiful humanity is, you know, and how beautiful, like, how beautiful people can be, and how kind and wonderful and strong and courageous and creative and just all those things. Like we will hold each other and we will make the world a better place.
100%. You know, so this
Yeah.
episode has revealed a lot. It's revealed the worst excesses of capitalism and international institutions, hypocrisy of Western powers. But it's also
Yeah.
revealed a lot of good, right? Like people who I never thought would have spoken up are speaking up, and people
Yeah.
who are so passionate about this. And we'll hold each other with the Palestinians leading the way, of course.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
they are, I tell you, all the videos that I see of them like making so much of life, committed to looking out for each other. Like the other day I saw someone recorded, it was horrible, but he was recording something, and I think his brother was like walking towards the distance, and then suddenly that got bombed. So he essentially recorded his brother being killed. And when that happened, everyone ran towards, because they wanted to help, you know, like the spirit that they have, the care, the community, the dignity that they hold themselves with, like it's just beyond. Yeah, they're really,
100%.
they've
Um,
really taught us so much. Yeah.
100%. And also, I am also glad, you know, just on a Singaporean basis, or Singaporean perspective, I am glad that finally this time around, Dr. Ang Swee Chai has been brought into the public eye, you know, is back in polite company,
Yeah.
because she's not Palestinian, but she's an honorary Palestinian. She was conferred a Friend of the Palestinian Award.
Yeah.
And she exactly typifies what you just said, Shu An, you know, and she said that, you know, I don't need self-care. If I feel
Right.
bad about myself, I just go help the Palestinians. That's what I don't even want. When I was interviewing with her, and then she said, I don't even want to be here. Maybe shows how bad the
Mm.
interview was, but she said,
It was
I
a
want to
really,
be,
really like yeah, really
I want
eye-opening
to be in
interview.
Gaza. She said, I
Yeah.
want to be in Gaza, and that was incredible. And she said, despair is not an option. Um,
Mm.
the founder of the Gaza Sunbirds, Karim Ali, said, despair is not an option Palestinians have as well. So I think
Yeah.
it's on that note that we should end, on that beautiful note. Thank you so much, Shu An. It was a
Thank
pleasure. Sorry
you.
for going over 1 hour.
No,
And thank
thank you
you.
all.
Yes.
Thank you, Walid.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for
Good
these
night. Good
conversations.
night, Shu An. Bye-bye.
Bye.